Thank you all for joining. I am Reese Roberts. I am your host of the Corporate Critic. This podcast is for anyone interested in private administration in the corporate setting. We are here to discuss what it looks like to administer your private estate when it comes to different industries. We will be looking at regulations. At a sort of a highlight of each episode, you will have a segment where we are looking at what these corporations are doing and what we can do about it to reserve our rights and to enforce our rights in effective ways. So I'm not going to hold you guys very long with a bunch of explanations, but I want you to know that Serv Associates Incorporated, aka Serv Inc., does provide administrative services if you are looking for someone to assist you with the private administration of your estate. We are not attorneys. We do not provide any legal advice or any legal representation. However, we can assist you with the administration of your entities and the administration of certain corporate laws in your private administration of your estate or different entities under your estate. So, with that in mind, we're going to continue with the understanding that this is not any legal advice. This is a study of research and administration in corporate government. Okay, so we're going to share screens real quick and we're going to do our spotlight on a particular um, regulation. And let's see if I can get my screen to share with you guys. I haven't been on this app for a while, but I guess it's like riding a bike. All right, so what we're looking at is consumer leases. I'm choosing to go over this really just as a simple way to introduce you to a larger point that I will get to in a few minutes. But I want you all to know that we have been kind of under a misconception of what a lease actually looks like. And so I'm going to break down the surface level understanding of why our consumer leases are not typically presented lawfully whenever we are entering these contracts. But I'm also going to show you some deeper things that play into the status that a person has when going into any contract, including a consumer lease. So, firstly, let's look at what these, let's see, is this okay? Yes. So, our consumer lease disclosures is where I want you to look at US 15 USC section 1667A, where it talks about these disclosures that need to happen with the lessor and the lessee. Okay, so firstly, when we're looking at our regulation, we always want to look at the terminology being used because, of course, this is going to help us understand what is being said and to whom it's being said to. So, in our consumer leases, we want to look at the conspicuous manner. Okay, of the following information with respect to the lease. Okay, this means you need to have this disclosure conspicuously appearing in your lease. A description of the property, any amount or the amount of any payment by the lessee required at the inception of the lease, the amount paid or payable by the lessee for official fees, registration certificate, certain licenses, fees, and taxes. And we're going to go down this entire list and look at all of the disclosures that are required. Brief description of insurance paid for by the lessor or is required of the lessee, description of any security interest, so on and so forth. Okay. So when you have your consumer lease, you want to look at the comparison between the two to see if these things actually show up in your lease. But what you also want to do is remember that there are certain terms that are found in your lease that are not applicable to you. So if you are referred to as a lessor or a lessee in your language, then you want to make sure that that is just according to the disclosures. However, if you're being referred to as a tenant and your landlord is being referred to as a landlord, okay, I want you to make note of what the law actually says is the definition of those terms over here in Title 10. Okay, USC section 2871, where it's talking about the landlord definition and the tenant. Okay, the landlord means an eligible entity that enters into or has entered into a contract as a partner excuse me. Yes, a partner with the secretary, concerned for the acquisition or construction of a housing unit under this chapter. It says the term includes any agent of the eligible entity or any subsequent lessor who owns or manages or otherwise responsible for a housing unit. Um, and so this is basically talking about a military housing barrack. If you look at this definition, excuse me. And so in this military housing unit, you will have to, of course, ask yourself, is this applicable? Because if it's not applicable, then you would not want to administer from this particular subchapter, especially if you're not in any kind of military housing. All right. So look at your lease. Make sure that if you are being referred to as a lessor or lessee, that these disclosures in this chapter are prevalent and that they are provided in your lease. If all these things are not there, meaning you have not received the proper disclosures, all of these descriptive things, a description of this, a description of that, a statement of this, a statement of that. Okay. You want to make sure that those things are there according to this subchapter or this section. And I want you to make sure that your lease is actually valid. If there's anything that's not there, you can create an administrative claim of your choice, wherever you would like to enforce. Now, let's talk a little bit about that because in the corporate world, the enforcement of an administrative claim looks a lot different than the enforcement of a lawsuit. All right. So you don't have to necessarily have a lawsuit against one of your respondents. If you want to administer your claim another way, you can go to any regulator to do that. You can go to a court of your choice, especially if you have an international claim. You might want to take it to the U.S. District Court for some sort of administration. But, however, you will find in most chapters under each title, you'll find information that will allow you to understand where you can go for enforcement. Now, let's see. You see where it says administrative enforcement? Okay. Each subchapter, once you get into the title and you find what subchapter you're interested in, typically you will find something that tells you about administrative enforcement. And this is the reason I want you guys to understand the difference between a lawyer and an administrator, or an attorney. In fact, those things can be misconstrued to be the same thing, but they really aren't. We're looking for facts under the laws. We're not looking for any specialized attention to one form of law over another, which is typically what an attorney may do. So here we're looking for administrative enforcement. They will tell you that you can go to the CFPB for enforcement. You can go to the FDIC for some sort of enforcement. There are different agencies, okay, that are enforcing here. And as you can see, the enforcing agencies are listed out to where you can go to actually find remedy for these types of claims if you are entitled to claim against any creditor or any entity or subsidiary of the federal government, which in a lot of cases, we find ourselves finding claims against the private corporate administrators of public trust, okay, or those trustees of public trust. So this is where you're going to typically find your administrative enforcement. Let's look through the rest of this. Um, let's look through the rest of this subchapter or these subchapters to see if the administrative enforcement is on each one. Sometimes I just like to look through things to see what's there because, yep, see, each one of this is going to tell you who is the enforcing agency. The Federal Trade Commission here is doing the administrative enforcement here. CFPB, FDIC, a similar enforcing group, or because, like I said, your enforcement can happen in many different ways. So, um, if you have a consumer lease, like I said, you can claim through any one of these entities. If you, let's just say, for example, you get an eviction, okay, you can file this into your eviction. And again, this is not legal advice. This is not legal advice, but this is something that you could use to support your claims or your evidence that you are not under the jurisdiction of any corporate administrator. if you choose not to be. Okay, now if you're being forced into an administrative procedure that you're not in agreement with, this is one way that you can administer a discharge or release from that from that type of order or that type of authority. This is something that we call a writ or a quo warranto. This is effective. It's highly effective, actually, in releasing yourself from an unauthorized administration. Okay, whenever you're being called into an administrative court, meaning this court is not under any judicial authority, that means you have the ability to opt out. You have the ability to question what authority are you being called to submit to. You can also look at the structure, the business structure of the court that is actually ordering you to take action, perform, pay, go to jail, certain things of that nature. You can look at what this quo warranto it says. It says a writ of quo warranto is in the nature of a writ of right for the king against him who claims or usurps any office, franchise, or liberty, to inquire by what authority he supports his claim, in order to determine the right. It lies also in the case of non user or long neglect of a franchise or misuser or abuse of it. Being a writ commanded the defendant commanding the defendant to show by what warrant be or he exercises such a franchise, having never had any grant of it or having forfeited it by neglect or abuse. So this is basically saying if a person is claiming an office of authority, they have to show some what warrant does that person exercise the use of their franchise. Okay, or how are you um, exercising this warrant or enforcing or ordering this warrant if you've never had any grant of permission, if you've never had any allowable or lawful consent that gives you the authority to assert yourself. And the best example I can give you of this is something like, for example, FINRA. FINRA is a member regulator who is privately controlled and owned. They are not claiming to be affiliated with the federal government. However, they are a private, self governed regulating or self regulating institution or agency. Okay, so with FINRA, how they govern is they have members, and all parties who are subject to their regulating jurisdiction must sign off on their consent to the arbitration process or the administrative arbitration of their disputes. And so most the non-judicial courts should be operating in that same form and fashion. However, we're seeing courts not operating in that same form and fashion because they are creating adhesions where they are forcing certain non-members or non-patrons to follow their orders, and they are doing that by threatening to arrest people. They are threatening to garnish wages. They are threatening to press charges, and so on and so forth, whenever they have not fully or lawfully established that they have the right or any damages to pursue against a person who they are calling under their jurisdiction or forcing under their jurisdiction. So, this is something that is good to read. If you want to take a screenshot of that, please do, so that you can have it. Because I don't want to read the entire thing. So, one of the reasons this is extremely important is because when we are looking for a writ of quo warranto to be answered by any corporate administrator or administrative office, what we're looking for them to tell us is about their status or their standing under the law. Because for us to be indigenous people or state nationals, ones who are non citizen nationals of the states, I should say, I shouldn't say of the states because that implies corporate status. However, if we are state nationals who are indigenous, okay, and we do not have any affiliation with the corporate, commercial, private, govern, or excuse me, corporate governing structure of the United States of America. We exist as a foreign state or a foreign nation. So, how do we look at our rights once we present ourselves as nationals? And why is that even important? Why is nationality the order of the day? Well, that's very simple because as we go into our analysis of the corporate structure and we look at the laws, all applicable laws governing the corporation, including their articles of incorporation, including any oaths, any charters, any policies, procedures, regulations, statutes, all these things come into play when we are talking about administering a business structure, not necessarily administering a political structure. Okay, a business structure must be administered in accordance or compliance with all applicable laws. So when we see that and we understand we're establishing a basis for an administrative claim, we must, and this is imperative, we must discuss the status of nationality. Okay, or we must discuss our nationality as our status, and that is the order of the day because a Black person does not have any protections under the law. So if we do a writ of quo warranto and we're asking what is your warrant that you're exercising authority over me, then we have to remember that the only way we will separate ourselves from the authority of a corporate administrator is for us to identify another private alternative to that administration, which means my nationality says that I have the rights of any other natural living person. I have natural human rights under the law. And so, again, I'm going to show you why it's so important for us to administer our our rights for public trust according to our nationality under international law. So, what I just pulled up for you is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and I absolutely love this document. I love to pull it up and make reference to it because it is a phenomenal reference to have anyone understand their human rights, which are inalienable, meaning they cannot be removed from the rights that are stated in this document, but recognized around the world and are a part of your inherent birthright. Okay, so what we're looking at is Article 24, where it talks about the right to acquire a nationality. Um, and so, firstly, let me just read. It says, every child shall have, without any discrimination as to race, color, sex, language, religion, national or social origin, property, or birth, the right to such measures of protection as are required by his status as a minor on the part of his family, society, and the state. Every child shall be registered immediately after birth and shall have a name. Every child has the right to acquire a nationality. Now, think of the words that are being used here. You have the right to acquire a nationality because it's not going to be just given to you at the point of your birth and registration of your birth. Okay, you have to acquire your nationality by expressing it under the law, by claiming it under the law. And why do you know that you must do that? I'm going to show you. Well, firstly, let me go to we're going to scroll down to Article 47 so we can further read about some of the rights that are agreed to and recognized in this covenant. Okay. So, Article 47, it is short, it's only one sentence long. So, I'm going to blow it up so that you can see it. I took it too far. All right. So it says nothing in the present covenant shall be interpreted as impairing the inherent right of all peoples to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. Right. So what we want to do is check out something the let me see, what is it? This is something the United States wrote in response to that article. It's declarations and reservations. They have a, I'm going to show it to you where to find it in just a second, but I'm going to pull it up because I need to be able to show you guys what I'm talking about in full form. Now, where is it? Oh, Jesus. Oh, here it is. All right, so let me see if I can. Oh, no. I need to open this with. Dang, I can't. I'm going to have to share my screen on another screen. Okay, so firstly, let's, like I said, I'm going to first show you where to find this, what I'm looking at, and then I'm going to show it to you. All right. Where's my. All right, so like I said, let me refresh your memory real quick. So, nothing in the present covenant shall be interpreted as impairing the inherent right of all peoples to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. All right, so when we come over here to look at the United States who signed that document that we just read. We're going to go and scroll down now. I want to show you first at the top of this. This is the depository of the different treaties that are held at the United Nations, where nations from around the world come together to sign off on these covenants. And they are there to let it be known how they feel about what they're signing and how they are going to administer the laws in their own nations in recognition of the laws and rights that are stated in these documents. So, what we're looking at is the status of the treaties, and we're looking at how many signatories and parties have become obligated, so to speak, to this covenant. Okay. So, when we scroll down, these are all the people. When you see the different nations, we're looking at all the nations who have signed and where it was signed and when it was ratified. All right. So, let's go to the United States of America. All right. Now, the United States of America shows here that they did sign and they created a document like an allonge or an attachment, which is considered their declarations and reservations. Okay. And so, if you can see this here after this list of all of these nations, this little small window pops up where you have all of this information. And so I'm like, who didn't want me to see that? Because it's almost invisible. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can share another document with you, which is the expanded window for that, for those declarations and reservations, because they are important to know, especially regarding the article that we just read. Now, where are my windows? There it is. All right, so the declarations and reservations. Here we're looking at where they are talking about how we can exercise our rights under international law and why we need to do that. Okay. Doing that means claim your nationality. Stop saying that you are Black. Stop saying that you're white. Stop saying that you are Hispanic. Stop saying that you are African American. Stop saying that you are anything that does not show up on a map. If you cannot point to a country on a map that says Hispanic, stop calling yourself that. Stop claiming that as your nationality. If you cannot point on a map, like point to it, like that says that right there says Africa, African American on a map, listen, that's not your nationality and it should never be claimed as nationality. So let's look. It says that the United States declares that the right referred to in Article 47 may be exercised only in accordance with international law. Do you see this word only? This is our key word. Okay. Let's remind ourselves what Article 47 just said, because Article 47 may only be exercised, okay, in accordance with international law. So that does not mean your constitution. It doesn't mean your local courthouse. It means international law, which can only be handled in maybe a district court or superior court of some sort. Okay, so we are looking at again what title? What is this? The Let me go back to my other screen. Let me go to my other screen. And so in Article 47, again, nothing in the present covenant shall be interpreted as impairing the inherent right of all people to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. So, your natural wealth and your natural resources may only be exercised in accordance with international law. International law means what? You have a nation. You cannot be international without being a national. If you are a citizen, you have no natural human rights. If you are anything that does not appear on a map, if you are brown, if you are yellow, if you are red, if you are black, if you are white, that does not appear on a map. It does not exist under the law. There are no codes that make any provisions for Black people or African American people or Hispanic people or Latin people. I don't think there's anything that says anything about Latin on the law on any of the regulations or laws or statutes or covenants or policies or anything that you can find that governs an administrative business structure. Okay, it just doesn't exist. So if you are claiming to be Black and you're trying to assert rights, you are not in accordance with international law. Nations have laws, nations have people. Okay, Black is a construct of a corporation. And if you are Black and you are proud, you are making a statement. Okay. You are making a statement. Now, it's okay for you to say that you Black out your mouth, but not, I mean, when you around your friends. But when we are out and about and we are handling our business, we cannot be Black. It does not apply to any form of rights. So even, and I'm going to tell you about a personal experience because these, I enforced these principles in my own case and was successful. So far, I have been able to establish a claim, okay, against who someone who purported to be a landlord, but have not shown that they have actually abided by these applicable laws. And so I have been offered a settlement in order for me to vacate the property. However, I am claiming my international rights as an Indigenous person to the land that I am connected to by my genetic code. And I'm also claiming that the public trust administration that I am doing privately, okay, it allows me to determine who I want to administer and who I do not want to administer any of the private property of my estate. Okay, and so that disqualifies any corporate administrator like a magistrate court from asserting any authority to hear the disputes in the matter. And so the person who purports to be a landlord, they must find an appropriate venue to be able to address my international rights. And so if the landlord cannot address my international rights that have been violated under these misrepresentations and these lack of disclosures, then I end up being victorious and having the superior claim because there must be an exercise of international law to exercise my natural rights. And that's what I was able to successfully do. So, this is something that we can apply to just about everything. Okay. We can apply our nationality to just about everything as long as we know how our contracts are to be constructed. A well constructed contract, a well constructed claim of your national rights, okay, under international law, as a state national or an indigenous person, these things give you a status under the law because the law mentions all over the place provisions for people who are uh, entitled, so to speak, to a natural birthright of certain, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness type of protected rights. Okay. And so once we understand our national um, status as indigenous on the land that we are genetically connected to, then we have more of an ability to establish a baseline of administration whenever it comes to the consumer or commercial transactions that we're entering with foreigners on our land. Okay. And it's not a problem. I think we should embrace the fact that we have allowed foreigners to come to our land and that we are allowing them to erect a financial system of um, currency. And we can benefit from that if we are able to um, to provide good service to one another. Our land is being administered under public trust. This is something, and I will share this with you. This is something that the International Covenant actually talks about the fact that we are considered in international law to be, let's see, they call it a trust territory, but they call us a non self governing. Okay, there it is. So it says that the states parties, okay, to the present covenant, talking about any nation, including those having responsibility for the administration of non-self-governing and trust territories, shall promote the realization of the right of self determination and shall respect that right in conformity with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. Okay, and they're talking about that because they're saying all peoples have the right of self determination. That means nobody can argue with you if you tell them what your nationality is. You are self determined because really you should be a self governing territory. Our people have been alienated from our humanity, which is the reason why we are considered to be minors or minorities based on the color of our skin. We have been able to, well, I should say, we have been stripped of our human rights because we've been stripped literally of our humanity as far as the paperwork is concerned. Okay, on paper we are black, which there is no area on the earth that exists where you can refer to that one place and say this is where black people are from. We come from all over the place, so we have to be specific. If you say you're from Africa, where are you from in Africa? If you're from America, you wouldn't go to somebody and say, "Oh, I'm just from America." Where are you from? If you was in Africa and somebody said, "Where are you from?" You say, "I'm from Africa." If you're in Africa, they go, where are you from? The Congo? You from Nigeria? You from Uganda? Where are you from? Zimbabwe? Where are you from? If I'm here in Georgia, I'm going to tell somebody I'm from Georgia. I'm from Maryland. I'm from Texas. These are nations. All of the above are nations, whether we're in Africa or America. We are separated by nations, not by states. So we must remember that we have to self determine these things if we wish to be recognized. And I'm sorry, I didn't show you this. This is where it says it in Article 1. Um, there are three sentences or parts of the paragraph here that talk about the right of self-determination. It says by virtue of that right they freely determine their political status. See that? Freely. Which means it doesn't matter. You don't even have to put that on a public record. You can just say it. You can just call somebody and say, hey, I'm not black. You can just call your bank and say, hey, I'm not black. You see what I'm saying? You can just call your public defender or your courthouse, hey, did you know I'm not black? Get that. Isn't that a hoot? Did you know that I'm not black? And then once you have the determination established that you are exercising under international law, your right to self determine who you are and where you come from. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status because your national status is what determines and establishes your political status. Do you want your political status to be that of a non human or a corporate fiction? Is that what, because if you are not claiming a national status properly, according to the GPO style manual, then what's happening is you are, under the laws now, dehumanizing and disenfranchising yourself. Okay, so you freely pursue your economic and social and cultural development. Another thing that the United States says is that none of these articles are self executing. You must express the law. You must express it. If you don't express this, they're not ever going to honor it if it's not expressed. Okay. Um, yeah, so I'm going to close off with that. And we will come back another time to have some interviews with some of the people that I am building this organization with. Our organization is coming up quite nicely. We have a team of experts and specialists who are helping us to administer certain parts of the code, and we are administering also our policies, procedures. We are building from the ground up an organization that will help you to build administrative claims, to process your administrative claims, and to make sure that you are being well taken care of when it comes to your right to self determination and also for your private administration of your own affairs in your contracts. So, we will help you establish the baseline of your nationality. We will help you establish a relationship with certain creditors that you may be dealing with so that they understand what the property value of your assets is and how you can leverage those things based off your claims of nationality. Okay. And I want you to remember this as in closing that all of this, okay, all of the paperwork, all of the affidavits, the court orders, all of the contracts, all of these things, they are all simply commercial papers. Okay. It's all just commercial papers and contracts. All right. Read your contracts, read it because I should say, excuse me, it's all for banking purposes. The contracts, the affidavits, the notes, all the paperwork that we're pushing back and forth, it is for banking purposes. So we need to remember that our nationality is the order of the day and it is directly connected to our banking activity and what we can and cannot do at the bank. Serv Associates Inc. is leading up the charge in banking compliance with banks and credit unions. And we are working to establish valid claims for discrimination in loans. And that's very exciting because we're working on the ability for our loans to be processed with the option, okay, to opt out of your mortgage. And so we are uh, establishing that claim right now as I speak. And we expect to be done administering that claim in a few months, maybe, I don't know, maybe a few weeks. We've been researching for years about um, our leverage. Okay, the leverage that we have for banking purposes when it comes to our national status and our human rights, especially because we understand that as humans we have the right to our property, and this includes financial assets and investment properties. So when we talk about how we're going to leverage those things, we're discussing that from the perspective of being a human and not a corporate fiction. Okay. So, again, my name is Reese Roberts. You are listening to the Corporate Critic. You will be hearing more information about all kinds of regulations from industries ranging from securities to car sales to home lending, to any type of financing, any type of corporate. Well, I should say any type of administration of your social security account number. Okay, we're looking for, we'll be producing conversations and interviews that focus on what the corporation does in order to administer these types of transactions and how that's going to impact you as a consumer in your administration while you coordinate and orchestrate your transactions with certain corporations. Okay, and whether they are government or whether they are private or whatever their classification of corporate entity is, we will help you to understand how to administer accordingly to the all of the policies, procedures, contracts, and so on and so forth that are subject to your transaction or that your subjects or your transactions are subject to. All right, so that's going to be the end. You got get in the comments. Let me know what you think about some of these laws that we've pulled up. If you have questions about evictions, about mortgages, about child support, about anything in the family court, if you'd like to ask questions about enforcing securities, anything that you may be thinking about, especially if you have a credit card debt, certain things like that that you're looking to remedy, you can reach out to our office. You can call 888-899-9372 to reach me, and we can talk about some of the types of cases we are working and what we have the ability to do for you to help you administer your private administration, okay, or your private estate. So that is it. You have been listening to the Corporate Critic. You will see me back here next week. If you found this video to be helpful, please give it a like. Go ahead, subscribe, and share this with your friends and family so that we all can learn what it means to be private people and what it means for us to administer our private estates for banking purposes as state nationals, not as Black people, not as African Americans. Oh, not as African Americans. I got too excited. Um, and not as anything but uh, uh, human beings, okay, with natural rights. So that's my time. Peace and love, you guys. I don't know how to, oh, there it is.